Wanted to talk to Paul Vallas, part two now, this charter school discussion, and partly because you are so passionate about it, because also, not just in Chicago, but whenever the education of children becomes a political football, the kids are placed second, third, or fourth, or fifth, or even further down the line, and the effects are obvious statistically. We can look them up, right?
Absolutely.
So when you have that kind of damage, why can't charter schools be an option? Yesterday we talked about some of the myths that were out there, some of the things that we asked you about. Charter schools are public schools. Charter schools are not for-profit entities. Charter schools are held accountable, but support is still dropping. Why?
Well, support is dropping not within the public. Within the public, there's not only strong support for charter schools, but within the Black community, particularly nationally, there's strong support. Let me point out that 96% of the children who go to charter schools in Chicago are Black and Latino, and 86% are families that are below the poverty level. So they have fled the traditional schools en masse, which is why the unions want to really gut the charters and in effect to drive them out. Let me point out that not only do they give them $8,600 less per pupil, but they literally don't allow them to even rent empty public school buildings. When Rahm Emanuel closed the 50 schools, there's over 100 charters. Most of those charters are not in traditional school buildings because they can't access them. So they rent buildings from old Catholic school buildings, they rent warehouses, etc. They could have easily rented most of those schools and kept those schools open. But the union forced the Emanuel administration to basically, when he closed the schools, not to turn them over to public charters. So they get very little community support. And the union is so fearful of charters, they forced the district to cap their number, and they forced the district to cap their enrollment. And now they're requiring that they renew their charter license every 2 years, which will make it impossible for them to recruit students and retain students and staff, because who wants the predictability of sending your kid or working in a school that might not be open after 2 years? So they're systematically destroying school choice, and that's just going to leave the children hostage to their failing neighborhood schools.
We had a listener yesterday, a very smart listener, by the way, who wrote a very well-written email, but one of the things they were concerned about is said that you, Paul Vallas, made it sound like it's easy to get into these things. And this individual said it's not. It's a long application process. Not everybody gets to go. Whereas your traditional public schools, they got to take everybody. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, let me point out that the district makes it exceedingly hard to enroll in and to take advantage of charter schools. They could make it really simple. But they have an office of enrollment. And if you go online, they list all the schools, because technically you could apply to enrollment in just about any public school. Traditional schools or even charter schools, if they have space, they will take you. Plus, when it comes to charter schools, if they have more applicants than they have admissions, and then they have seats for, obviously there's a lottery, so they'll take those students who applied first. But the charter schools are all open enrollment schools. And let me point out that the district even resists the local community maybe bringing in a charter model to replace their family neighborhood school. So, for example, I think there's 20 schools in Chicago where not a single student is at proficiency, not a single student. So if you had a community where only a handful of kids are meeting standards, and that community said, we want a different model, maybe we want Chicago International Charter or Nobel, which is one of the top charter high schools in the city. And Nobel is like 90, I think it's almost 100% minority. If you wanted that model to come in and to replace your failing local school model, the union would block that. You would not be able to do that. The union wants to maintain their monopoly on local schools. And the union will cry poor, and they'll say that charter schools are taking money away from the regular schools. Charter schools take kids. The money follows the kids. But this is a district, Steve, that spends $30,000 per student. It's a district that has one teacher for every 15 students and one employee for every 7.5 students. So this is a district that is flush with resources. The fundamental question is, how are those resources being allocated? Actually, only about 56% of the money that goes to the schools actually finds its way into the local schools. So this is a system that is spending money very poorly, and a union that is forcing the school district's leadership to really limit children's choices in Chicago.
Paul, you said that the district makes it difficult for the students to enroll, but it may be difficult to enroll, but I think that involves some pre-planning on the parents' side, if that's the direction they want to go with their kids and have the choice to do so. When we talk about the charter schools, the curriculum is the same, or is the curriculum the same?
Well, charter schools have to meet state and federal standards. And charter schools, for example, have to meet special education standards, et cetera. And charter schools cannot select. They're not select enrollment schools like the handful of magnet schools that they have, where the admission to the magnet schools is based on testing. But different charter schools have different models. What charter schools are able to do is, for example, they can have a longer day and they can have a longer year. And they can have, they can have a specific focus. They have the flexibility to enhance the standards, and they can go beyond just what the minimum requirements are. But as a public school, as a not-for-profit public school, they have to adhere to all the state standards that are being required. Let me tell you what's happening at the local school district level and at the state level. There's an attack on standardized tests. The union claims that standardized tests are racist and they're discriminatory. That's why 1 in 4 students are reading at proficiency and 1 in 6 are calculating their math. They are at math proficiency when it comes to meeting state standards, but yet they graduated 84% of the students. Last year, 79% of the black students graduated. They had 6% of the black students were meeting national standards and were meeting state standards in math. So they're simply socially promoting children to the next level. Most charters haven't abandoned those standards. They're not socially promoting. They are applying more rigorous standards. What the union solution to the bad performance of the Chicago Public Schools is to de-emphasize testing, and it's not demonize testing, and to look at other things that they claim are real factors that can determine how students are performing. And the net effect is the academic performance of the district is simply abysmal, despite the fact that they're spending $30,000 per kid.
I've only got like a minute here, but as best you can, tell us what we ought to be doing about this, because the best case scenario is public schools and charter schools peacefully coexist together. I assume you can say, or you would say, that is possible in the real world, but the board is fighting it as for the reasons you've laid out. But what should the public do?
Well, look, you're going to have local school. You're now going to have an elected school board, and it's really going to be important to elect members of that local school board who are not going to be a kowtow to the teachers union. Let me point out that the teachers union is not only trying to gerrymander the map so that they can dominate the school board, but they're still debating whether or not they're going to immediately elect all the members or transition to an elected school board. So they're trying to position themselves so they can dominate. But at the end of the day, it's really going to be important that you elect individuals who believe in public school choice. This union does not. And let me point out that 40% of the teachers do not even send their kids to the Chicago public schools. That's about twice the national level, the national rate. And as you know, the union president sends their kids to a private school, which is fine. But the other union leaders have sent their kids to magnet schools, select enrollment magnet schools. Now, of course, they want to close the remaining 11. There's only 11 magnet high schools of the 163 high schools, but they're attacking the magnet high schools too, despite the fact that union leadership in the past has just, coincidentally, just for some lucky reason, won the lottery, and they were able to get their kids enrolled in these magnet schools. So what is good for the goose is not good for the gander.
Yeah. It's okay for me. It's not okay for you. Well, obviously, we got to continue the conversation. The school board election is a bit off, but consider this a start and consider yourself fired up and do your research. And Paul Vallas, thank you as always.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Thanks, Paul.